Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cyril Turn, the MLA for Spruce Grove and Stony Plain, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today for this exciting announcement. I'm obviously joined by the Honourable Jason Nixon, the Minister of Environment and Parks, Christina Seidel, Executive Director of the Recycling Council of Alberta, and Ed Guggenheimer, CEO of the Alberta Recycling Management Authority. We're here today to talk about waste management. This policy area is an important part of how our communities operate. And that's why in the fall of 2020, I brought a motion forward in the legislature encouraging the provincial government to look at the feasibility of improved waste management measures like extended producer responsibility. As a former city councillor in Spruce Grove and a longtime environmental steward, I've seen the negative effects of sending recyclable items to the landfill, as well as the cost of programs and the tax dollars required to run those programs. For years, many municipalities and organizations across Alberta have advocated for long-term solutions and improvements, and extended producer responsibility is a fantastic fit for our province. I'm excited about the opportunities and benefits that this can bring to Alberta, and will now turn things over to Minister Nixon to tell you more about our progress and future plans for this new approach. Thank you.
Oops. Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction, Cyril. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's afternoon now. If not, good morning. I wholeheartedly share MLA Turton's enthusiasm for today's announcement. Thank him for all of his hard work to get us to today. The people that are gathered with me here today share our goal in reducing the amount of waste Albertans send to landfills every year. We all know that Alberta faces a big problem in the amount of waste that we create. The fact is, big changes to the recycling programs have not occurred since Ralph Klein was the Environment Minister over 30 years ago with mandatory bottle recycling. And that recycling program has been working well, and I don't plan to change it. At that time, you could have said Alberta was leading the country in recycling and speak with pride about the leadership. But 30 years have passed. Not much has moved on our recycling programs, and Albertans are now sending more waste per person to the landfill than any other jurisdiction. In fact, a quarter ton more than the national average. That's why we need to do better. Our plan to reduce waste has begun with deliberate steps that have eliminated stockpiles of electronics from going to landfills. One of my first actions as Minister of Environment was to expand the electronics recycling program with Alberta Recycling to help keep mercury, lead, and other toxins out of the province's water and keep valuable material out of our landfills. Again, Alberta was the first province in the country to introduce an electronics recycling with a levy, but has been stuck in the same spot for 15 years. The first year of this expansion has been a staggering success, with stockpiles of electronic devices eliminating and the creation of 400 full-time jobs in the sector, in addition to the 360 that existed previously. Because of this work, Alberta is now home to North America's first solar panel recycling initiative to improve the environmental footprint of residential solar panels. This work has also led to lots of discussion about creating a stronger, better system, and it's great to be here announcing a big step forward. Today, our government is introducing new legislation that will help enable extended producer responsibility, or EPR for short, in Alberta. Right now, and for far too long, municipalities and taxpayers have been shouldering the burden of collecting, sorting, processing, and recycling waste. Today, we're moving Alberta forward with legislation that will make producers responsible for the system. In order to bring an EPR framework, we will be tabling the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Amendment Act this afternoon. Alberta's government has made a commitment. Alberta will be a centre of excellence for plastic diversion and recycling by 2030. If passed, these amendments will get Alberta one step closer to creating an EPR framework, which will put provincial systems in place for managing single-use plastics, packaging, paper products, and hazardous and special products like household pesticides and solvents that are used in Alberta homes. To become a centre of excellence by 2030, a legislative extended producer responsibility program will be needed to build and diversify this sector here at home with a Made in Alberta solution. Once this legislation is passed, my ministry will be able to create an EPR system that will work for Albertans. A Made in Alberta solution for wiser waste management that will create jobs, diversify the plastic economy instead of creating environmental waste. As a province, we can increase the future economic value of the recycling industry by $1.4 billion and 13,000 jobs. In fact, companies like Dow Chemicals have said post-consumer products have tripled in sales in the past year alone. And this part is key. Some would try to simply ban certain materials, but here in Alberta, we have a talented workforce and industry that can take these valuable materials and put them back into the circular economy in a well-managed system. Our proposed EPR approach is good for the environment and the economy, supporting diversification by encouraging companies to find innovative ways to recycle more materials and produce less packaging and waste. These kind of programs have the potential to do better, even leading the country again, and make an impact on reducing waste outside of our borders. It aligns with producer-run programs in BC and other jurisdictions, empowering producers to create local recycling markets, design cost-effective and efficient recycling programs, get the most value for their products, and demonstrate environmental responsibility. The plastic circular economy contributes to Alberta's economic recovery in positive ways and is a key part of Alberta's natural gas vision and strategy. This strategy lays out a plan for Alberta to become a global supplier of clean, responsible source natural gas and related products, including recycled plastics and petrochemicals. This is important, and we want to get it right. That's why we're taking the time to talk to experts and learn from other jurisdictions to ensure that our EPR framework is the most effective and efficient that it can be. In the spring, we had insightful and productive conversations with stakeholders and Albertans through roundtables and an online survey. We summarized some of the key findings from those discussions into a What We Heard document that we are releasing today on alberta.ca. However, we want more input into how EPR should work here in Alberta, and that's why we're inviting stakeholders in the public to provide any additional comments before December 15th of this year. This feedback, combined with what we heard in the spring and the amendments introduced today, will let us design an effective, well-informed EPR framework that is tailored to Alberta. It's clear that EPR is a smart move going forward for our environment and our economy. Today is a big step towards making that a reality. If there's one thing industry and government around the world can agree on, it's that it's unacceptable to see plastic waste in our landfills, in our communities, and in our waterways. We can and we must do better, which is why we're setting the foundation today to bring an EPR framework into Alberta in 2022. I look forward to seeing this policy continue to take shape, helping Alberta achieve our goal of becoming Western North America's Centre of Excellence for plastic diversion and recycling by 2030. And with that, I'd like to pass things over to my friend, Christina, from the Recycling Council of Alberta. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Nixon. Thank you very much. We are thrilled to be here talking today about extended producer responsibility and very excited to see Alberta moving to deliver this important environmental policy tool. So EPR is really about making producers accountable. But not only is that a very fair approach, but it's also a very effective approach. Really, producers are in the best position to be able to influence design, and that means that we can design products that reduce waste as well as are more recyclable. So there is a real benefit in having producers really steering the bus on this. We really also recognize that the private sector has the ability to innovate. That's one of their great strengths, and their ability to innovate means that we're more likely to end up with an efficient system as well as, at the end of the day, better environmental outcomes. But it's not just about producers, it's also about consumers. So consumers play a very important role in this whole equation, and because they have a lot of involvement, they expect outcomes as well, and EPR really helps them to actually produce the environmental outcomes that we all want. So at the end of the day, you heard the minister talk about circular economy. And really, EPR is a key mechanism for building that circular economy. That's one of the reasons it's so important. So if we look at circular economy approaches, really what circular economy can do is result in better design. So better designs means we end up with better products at the end of the day, better packaging, and we end up with less waste as a result because we produce less. Circular economy also results in more effective use of products through the whole economic system. And really, that means that products and materials last longer, they're used longer, they're more effectively utilized, and they're recognized as what they are, which is very high-value resources. And ultimately, at the end of the day, circular economy is about a healthier environment. So that's really what we're all working towards, and circular economy is going to get us there through mechanisms like EPR. But I really want to just take a second to recognize our partners in this journey, because we've been in this game for a long time, but we sure haven't been doing this alone. So thank you very much, MLA Turton, for really launching and kicking us off. That was critical. Also want to recognize the municipalities that have played a really important role in this, and specifically I want to recognize Councillor Peter Demong from Calgary, who really was our cheerleader through this whole system and our process. I also need to recognize the Alberta Environment and Parks staff who we've worked with closely, and they have always been willing to be there with us and continue the conversation. So we really recognize the work that they've done. But I really want to also note that the producer representatives have been beside us the whole way. So they have been together with us advocating for EPR, which is really critical to making this happen. But I also want to thank the minister. Thank you very much, Minister Nixon. You never wavered on your support for this key concept, and we really appreciate that. So thank you very much for keeping us going. So now I am going to turn it over to Ed Guggenheimer from Alberta Recycling.
So thank you, Christina, and the Recycling Council of Alberta. Your organization is essential to Alberta's efforts to grow a circular economy. Your leadership and environmental waste reduction initiatives is something this province can be very proud of. And of course, it's as much an honor and privilege to be here with Minister Nixon and MLA Turton. Your vision and leadership have moved the needle on environmental issues at a critical time in history. At the same time, our economy is recovering from a drop in resource revenues and a pandemic. Investors are looking for signs that Alberta offers a competitive value for sustainable portfolios. Today's announcement is exactly that kind of signal to the international and private investment market. And it rounds out a series of major provincial announcements we've seen lately about creating a more prosperous province and a more sustainable future. At ARMA, everything we do is focused on our vision of a world without waste. We have a deep understanding of what's required to recycle and reuse high-value products like paint, electronics, tires, and industrial oil. For a long time now, we've been working to help develop a marketplace that extends the life cycle of these products and increases their value through the supply chain. That idea behind moves us from a linear to a circular economy. We're envisioning how people define waste. Well, we see it as a resource. Better management of that resource is a valuable economic opportunity for the province. This isn't a new concept or a challenge for producers or suppliers. The new EPR paradigm for Alberta will be familiar to many of those who operate in other areas of the country and across the globe. EPR shifts the costs of recycling materials like packaging, paper products, single-use plastics, hazardous and special products away from municipalities and the everyday Albertan. It moves it to producers and manufacturers who supply those products into our very marketplace. The ideal goal is to incentivize waste reduction from the very early stages of a product's life cycle through raw material extraction right on through to its development and sale at a point of sale. That's a big task, but major corporations around the world are tackling it every day, and in several countries the same, to make sustainable improvements to their products, how they're manufactured, sold, and consumed, and of course disposed of. In our cities and towns, EPR is that pointy end of the spear. It's an essential tool to help municipalities forge stronger, more equitable partnerships with producers. This program will help ARMA and our partners in the circular economy do even more to reduce waste and make our province an attractive place for investors with a cleaner environment. And it goes a long way to helping our municipalities focus their efforts and their budgets where they can have the greatest and most long-lasting impact on creating sustainable communities. Thank you again to the Minister and the Government of Alberta for today's announcement. We look forward to continuing to work with you, with our municipal stakeholders and our producer partners in the industry to continue a future without waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, everybody. And we'll now have questions from the line. Operator, can you put through the first reporter, please?
Lisa Johnson, Edmonton Journal.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This first one is for the minister. I'm wondering, the way that I understand this, it means that the regulations are still yet to be developed, but this legislation opens the door for that. So then, once the regulations are developed, EPR can go straight into force with no other legislation required. This can be rolled out the door relatively quickly in the spring.
You got that right, Lisa. So there's two ways I could have went about this. Was one, we could have legislated in the spring sitting, and I considered it. Usually I would prefer to do it a little closer to when we would complete regulations. That said, given some of the things that have been taking place both across the country and in our province on this issue, I thought it was important that we made a clear statement in the legislature that we would be moving forward with extended producer responsibility and fulfilling our commitments, not only to Albertans, municipalities, and organizations all across the province, but to large international investors like Dow, where we've been made it very clear that we would move forward with serious recycling programs inside our province. And Lisa, we see this as a very different response to what we're seeing from the federal government on this issue, which is a focus on bans. From our perspective, the issue is a waste problem, not a product problem. And by putting this in the legislature, we're sending a strong signal to our federal counterparts that this is the way Alberta intends to deal with this very important issue.
Follow-up question?
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm wondering from Christina and Ed if you could speak a little bit about looking forward, what kinds of exemptions do you think would be appropriate for an EPR framework?
So in terms of exemptions, it's an interesting question because EPR is usually introduced by product category. So really, it's choosing the products that are the priorities that we need to introduce first, and then within those, whether or not there's actually opportunities, as you're calling, for exemptions. So it's not a really simple question, but one of the things that does come forward often is really small businesses. So small businesses often end up falling under an exclusionary clause called de minimis, in which case, if you're really small, you may not actually have to be part of the regulation. I think that may be what you were really trying to get at. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, because we don't know exactly what the exemptions are going to be for, but yeah, that makes sense. For smaller businesses is common in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I think that the thing to really think about even before exemptions is what's actually going to be included first. That's probably the first thing for you to look at, and then you might want to look in more detail at what's included within those categories. Ed, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you got it.
Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
That's it?
Yep.
That was easy.
Thank you very much. Hey, thanks, guys. Congratulations.